welcome to another episode of Coast Connections. We're coming to you as always from the Nanaimo First Nation here on Vancouver Island, and also the chosen home of the Métis Nation, the Mid-Island Métis Nation. The studio is a hive of activity today. We have a very special guest from the Nanaimo Beekeepers Club. Please welcome a friend of the show and a repeat guest, Mr. Peter Lange.
Thank you. Hello, welcome. Thanks, Elizabeth.
You're very welcome. Nice to have you back, Peter.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you brought your Winnie the Pooh honey pot, I see, and a bottle of mead. I see it's half empty.
Yes, well, half full. I'm
Oh, half full. Yeah. I like the way you see the world. It's a half full mead.
slightly delusional there.
Yeah, and of course, mead is wine that's made out of honey, isn't it?
It is, yeah, fermented. Yeah.
One of the oldest beverages on the planet. And speaking of old, I think bees are like 200 million years old. They've survived the dinosaurs and everybody else.
They have.
We've only been around for about 100,000 years as humans, and so they're one of the oldest species on Earth.
They are.
Yeah.
Maybe not the honeybee as we have it, but in general, absolutely. And they've adapted beautifully to a lot of things happening. At the moment, there are some challenges for them, which we humans provide, but generally speaking, what a species.
Yes, and you have had such a long-term relationship with honeybees. How long have you been in the business, Peter?
I've been doing beekeeping for a little over 10 years now, and I started it when I moved to Vancouver Island, was looking for a new hobby, and got into it. My wife started it, and now I'm more of the beekeeper than she is, but we do a bit of it together, and yeah, it's been a fun hobby.
Yeah, learn a lot, I'm sure, from the bees themselves and their social structure. And is one hive sort of the same as another, Peter, or do they have different characteristics?
They have very different characteristics. They so when I try to keep 5-6 hives. That sort of size is my hobby beekeeping, but they are really different, and you can sense that some of them sort of get up early in the morning and they go out and forage as soon as the sun comes up. The others not so much. They're a little bit like late morning, or others are a little more protective of their hive, so they defend a little harder. Others are more gentle. You can really see differences, and none of them, even though they're in my garden, would ever produce the same honey.
That's very interesting. And the hives are like, what, about 3 feet away from each other?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yet
They're like not far away.
Yeah.
But each hive is basically finding their own way of going out and their favorite nectar source, and how much of what do they bring back. And yeah, it's fascinating. Actually, you can see even within a hive, you can see the differences.
Let's take a look at the hive that you brought.
Sure.
We'll just take the honeycomb off there.
Yeah.
And
So this is a little nuke box I brought you here, and this is like half a box of bees.
Okay.
Normally the standard hive would be about twice as wide, but has the same length. And it takes about 10 of those frames. That's a standard size that we have. And we use this to start colonies. And when you get yourself into beekeeping, you would in all likelihood get a few 4 to 5 frames of bees and pollen and food, and would start that off in a little box like that, or would come in a little box like this, and then you move it into a full-size box. And
can we pop the lid off that, or
Sure.
are there bees in there?
No, not
Not that we
bees
know of.
in there. No, not this time. So this is just the lid. So this is how our hive standard. So we have a lid that protects from the weather. So that's what we call the outer lid. Then we have an inner lid, which is just this part here. And that sort of stops the bees from gluing this shut, and gives also a little bit of space here to maybe put some food or some other things to look after the bees. And then when we lift that off, then that's where you have your frames. And this is a defined space in between that is actually just the right width that the bees would not fill it with comb, so you can actually maintain the idea of taking comb out. In the old days, you always had to destroy the comb to get to the honey. So Langstrot is actually the invention here, the bee space. The discovery that if you only give them a certain space, they will not fill it, has led to all of this, and that's been more than 100 years ago.
Wow.
So yeah, so this is how it starts. You have an entrance, and that's all they need. They need a cavity, dark, that they can fill and live, and they have an entrance and they fly in and out, and that's pretty much it.
And how many bees would live in a hive that size?
Well, in that size, I think you would only have maybe 5,000 bees. But a bigger hive, there would be multiple boxes. They would be 20,000 bees, up to 80,000 bees. We have colonies that have up to 80,000 bees.
Wow.
And they change size during the year as well.
As they mature?
They mature, and also as they have food. So when they come through winter, which is right now, they've just come out of winter. So at the moment they are busy building up population because they want to get ready for nectar flow and to collect honey, which is winter storage. So at the moment we are seeing all the beehives trying to sort of ramp up population. And as they get closer to fall, they would start to sort of have fewer bees, and a few of them would die off and they would not produce new bees. And that's why they manage the numbers down. It's like a superorganism. So they manage themselves as an entirety, not so much as an individual bee. It's quite fascinating. And they decide that all on their own and depending on what they see happening in nature.
That's incredible, the intelligence in a bee colony. Now, the hierarchy, there's one queen, and there's worker bees, and there's drones. Let's talk a little bit about the roles of those three species.
So let's start with the queen. The queen is really a hardworking bee in the hive, because it's her job is to lay the eggs, and therefore she's the only one who can do that, and she's the one that makes sure the population of the hive can actually survive. So each egg that she lays turns in 21 days later, would typically turn into a worker bee. And if she lays an egg that is not fertilized, it will be a drone. I'll explain that in a moment, and that takes 24 days. So she's super important. There's only one, and she is actually also the only bee that lives for a long time. She can live up to 5 years, but most of the time the bees would maybe replace her a little sooner than that. So that's the queen. The worker bees are exactly as the name suggests. They are sometimes they call them also the girls. They are female, and they actually are the ones that really rule the hive. So their behavior is they are the ones that decide how many eggs do we lay, where do we put stuff. They decide on the different roles. A bee sort of coming out of her coming into being in the hive would start with relatively minor tasks like, I don't know, cleaning cells and feeding the other brood, and eventually would go almost like get a promotion to more important jobs like, I don't know, protecting the entrance or foraging or something like that. So they are the vast majority of the population of the hive. So, and then you have maybe 10% drones, so 90% would be
just bees. Within the worker bees, then there's sort of a career trajectory. You can be the janitor, you can be the nanny, you can be the guard, you can be the forager.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like a genetic program that they are playing. So one of the things that's been happening when maybe there is pressure in the environment, foragers, for some reason, I don't know, get in touch with pesticides and therefore die. So if a hive would have fewer foragers than expected, they would start to promote other bees kind of a little prematurely into these roles. So they can adjust, but the normal genetic script is exactly as you just said.
Wow. And then the drones. They're
the drones are there to the drones are very important too, but they have a different job. Their main job is to fertilize the queen. So as a new queen gets born in the hive, she's a virgin queen. She goes on a maiden flight, and that's when she mates with 10 to 30 drones. Not so much from her own hive. They go to areas where drones from all sorts of other hives sort of would congregate, and then they would have that mating.
And she flies, maybe 3 to 5 kilometers away,
easily,
just to get the genetic mix-up going a bit?
Exactly, and then that way, when she comes back, she needs a few more days to fully develop, and then she starts laying eggs for the rest of her life. And that was the one time this might last for years. gene pool that she then carries in herself. Yeah.
And then she intermittently, over that period of time, spreads that sperm into the cells?
Yes, she
Wow.
does. She lays
But
an
she
egg
only
and
mates
fertilizes
for that one
For
trip.
that one trip, yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only other time when she might leave the hive is when she would swarm.
Yes.
But as I said, the drones are the ones that are doing that, and then they also get credited with keeping the brood a little bit warm inside out. But other than that, not so much work.
Yeah.
And the beehive in its sort of efficiency and in the superorganism communal kind of trying to do the best for the whole group, they would even kick them out towards the end of fall when they know like it's not conditions anymore where we're going to have a new queen. They would say, get out of here.
Would dethrone her.
You would dethrone. Yeah, they get kicked out and they pass.
Yeah.
Like all bees, a worker bee only has a typical life of 6 weeks.
Wow. Wow. And in like a hive that size, how much honey could you produce in a good year?
Yeah, this hive would actually produce very little honey because it doesn't give enough space. The honey that this hive would produce in this size is probably what you would leave with the bees, because we can only take the surplus as beekeepers. So that definitely would need all the hair. But let's say a typical hive here in our area, 30 pounds, 50 pounds maybe, which is much less than what you would, for example, get in the prairies.
Okay.
Where people are used to have 100 pounds and more per beehive.
And is that because the availability of things like clover and other plants and crops?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's the conditions there. Actually, Canada and the prairies have some of the best performing honey producing hives in the world. It's extraordinary what beekeeping can produce there. And I think 80% of all honey that we make in Canada is actually from the prairies.
Wow. And do we export a lot of that?
We export a fair amount. Quite a bit goes to the US, maybe not anymore, we'll see. But Japan is important. We export to many countries. Our honey has a good reputation, good quality, and we also eat a lot ourselves.
Yeah. Well, you're very healthy.
Like in that little pot.
I love your Winnie the Pooh honey pot. Now, what have we got here? It looks like your smoker. And I don't think it's for anything, medicinal or for your glaucoma.
No, it is not. This is a little trick that you can use in beekeeping to calm your bees down. So what you do is, this is like you make a little fire in here, and then you can blow smoke.
Are you using wood chips in there to make your fire?
Yeah, you use wood chips. You can use also burlap, so just old bags or something like this, and you just produce a little bit of smoke. And as you blow this, so as you approach your hive, you can blow a little bit into the entrance here at the front, or you lift a little bit and put a bit in here. Not too much, but it calms the bees down. Or I think maybe more accurately, it distracts them because they are smelling the smoke. And don't forget, they live in trees normally, so tree trunks. So they might be concerned that there's a forest fire or something going on that would force them to abandon their hive. And so they are starting to prepare a little bit. And they would go into the honey storage and fill their honey stomachs with honey, just in case they need to move out. So they're a little bit distracted. Their communication also doesn't work so well. So we have a little bit of time to check the hive for bee health or do, I don't know. It normally only takes a few minutes anyway. In that period, we calm them down, close it all up again, and then in a little while, that effect is also forgotten for them.
Do you ever get rodents or reptiles in the hives?
Very rarely, sometimes in winter, because it's a nice, cozy place.
Sure.
I had a mouse... I had a little mouse nest in one of my hives when I checked it out in spring, but it was all good. The bees were a little bit higher up in the hive, so it was like this high. The bees were a little bit higher up, and there was a little nest I found in the bottom in the basement suite.
So they were coexisting.
They were, and I think the mouse was very lucky because if the bees decided we don't like it, they could kick her out or even kill her.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah, so you get that. And so, of course, we are supposed to do little screens or something. You can put that on to prevent that. But I personally haven't had that much of a problem with it.
I was amazed to learn that bees have 5 eyes. I did not know that, Peter.
Yeah, they have eyes. They have a lot of things. They have also four wings.
4 wings, yeah.
And they're extremely well built for the job. They navigate extremely well. I mean, just imagine, as a bee flies out of the hive 5 kilometers, up to 5 kilometers to find food and find it back and find her way back.
How do they find their way home?
Yeah, it's through it's mostly through sun position, and of course there's a memory there. So the first time they go out, they do a bit of an orientation flight.
Wow.
They circle around, and they kind of, and that kind of programs their little Google map into their brain, and then they go and they actually find it back, and it's actually quite interesting. Even if I would take this hive in my own garden and I move it by, let's say, 10 feet, they would actually have a bit of a problem to find back. It would take them a bit of time. They're so accurate in the location they want to come back to. That would take a bit of time for them to hopefully find the other one.
That's amazing, just amazing. Yeah. And the 4 wings, like we usually just see 2, but they have 2 sort of near the end of their abdomen there?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
And they can also link them, but most of the time it looks like 2, but it is actually 4. It's like 2 pairs of wings, and that helps them to navigate. They're also pretty quick, so they could 30 kilometers an hour, 35 kilometers an hour.
Wow.
So not easy to outrun in case they want to go after you. They don't always go full speed, but it's amazing what they can do.
Let's talk about how they actually collect pollen on their bodies and the role static electricity plays in that, which is fascinating.
Yeah, so first of all, the whole pollen thing is, of course, why the flower creates the pollen in the first place. They don't want the bee to collect that. It's part of propagating and helping the flower. So there's normally a symbiotic relationship between the flower attracts the honeybee through colorful flowers. A lot of bees, or honeybees in particular, like yellow.
Yeah.
So then they go there and they have a slight electrical charge on their body. And so when they land, and they not only go for pollen, but they also go for nectar, ideally, but there isn't always nectar flow. And then the pollen, actually, it's easier for the pollen to attach to their legs. And it's like little, they have like little bags here.
Yeah.
And so you can see when a bee comes home, you can see at the entrance that the pollen is packed around her legs. And depending on the color, you can also say, well, where have you been? Yeah. It's a very cool way.
And how does she then get the honey off? Or
well,
the pollen?
Yeah, the pollen gets stripped off, and she normally also just passes it on. So the forger will come back in, and they're like a little cargo ship. So they go out there, and they come back home, and they go in, and then the bees that are in the hive, they would actually take a lot of that, whatever they bring, they would actually take that off the bees and then put it into the cells on the frame and for storage.
Is it true they use a honeycomb to take the pollen off?
No.
Okay.
Good idea, though.
Yeah.
Good idea. Yeah, they don't need that.
And in one bee's lifetime, they only produce like a half a teaspoon of honey?
Oh, much less than that.
Much less than that?
Twelfth of a.
Wow.
Maybe 10% of a teaspoon. Yeah, it's a lot of work to make a pot of honey like this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a lot of effort.
Yeah, it's a lot
Let's
of effort.
look at the
frame here?
The frame, pardon me, I was going to say super.
Yeah.
Because that hexagonal honeycomb shape, it almost looks like it's 3D printed. It's so precise.
It looks a bit like this, just smaller.
Yeah, yeah.
It is.
So precise.
It is very precise and so material efficient as well. So they do 2 things. They build them in that hexagonal shape, but also they angle them a bit upwards. So why do they do this? Because they're a little bit angled up, so when they put honey in, it can't run out.
Okay.
So they are. So these cells are multi-purpose. Think of them as maybe the rooms in a house. They can put in each of those cells. They could put an egg to make another bee. They could put pollen, which, by the way, is protein.
Right.
So part of their diet, they need protein, and then the nectar that they bring in, that's carbohydrate. And so they could put, so they can at any given point in time, they use exactly the same cell, and they can decide how much of what do they use, when, where. So they can change that around. And so, yeah, so as you're saying, the bee comes in with full of propolis. So then we say, okay, let's put the propolis in here. So you start to see frames and you pull them, and they have all these sort of bright colors, cells, depending on what pollen came in. And then you have maybe a little patch of which looks like it's going to be honey or it's going to be nectar. And then you have a bit of brood. So you can have all of that in that frame, and they would make it. Very often they would have the brood here in a semicircle.
And the brood
and then
is
have
the,
all
like
the
the
food
nursery?
around. Yeah, it's like a nursery, absolutely. They would start with an egg, and then it would be capped, and 21 days it comes out. But they would have their eggs here in a semicircle, because then they have the food storage optimized up here. It minimizes the distance to actually supporting the brood that they have. And it's
the intelligence in this is just incredible.
Yeah, it's extremely clever.
Very.
And
can you actually eat the comb as well? Do people eat honeycomb?
You could, but you can't digest it. So sometimes comb honey is a thing. So you can sometimes on a farmer's market or somewhere you can buy a cube of wax full of honey, and you can take it like chewing gum. You can take the whole thing and you just eat it, and then you chew on it, and you'd be surprised how little material or wax it actually takes for that little cube. So you chew it, and then you have a tiny bit of wax left at the end, and you can swallow it or spit it out. Or it's people don't eat. They don't digest. We can't digest it. We can't do much. We can do with other bee products. We can do stuff, but not so much with the wax. We make candles.
Of course. Oh yeah, beeswax candles
polish and
burn beautifully. And it's in a lot of cosmetics.
Exactly. Yeah. So is propolis, by the way.
Yeah, and very healing too. As a balm, has been used since the beginning of time.
Yeah. You can just put it on a wound, and propolis tincture, which is the sort of bee medication. I see a bit of propolis here. I don't know if I showed you this last time, but you see a little bit this brown stuff on here, which is bee glue in a certain way. What they do is they seal the hive, and all the little cracks and that are in there, they glue shut, and they do that with propolis. And that also has very good properties for disinfecting. So a lot of people have it in a bit of alcohol, and then you just leave it there for a long time, and then you can put it on wounds and stuff, and it's very good.
Fascinating. These bees are amazing. And 75% of the world's plants, 90% of the world's crops rely on bees for pollination. And they said if the bees were to disappear, humans would last maybe up to 4 years on this earth. That's how they're sustaining life on this planet.
They do.
Yeah.
And we've built it also a little bit that way, because we have, of course, built our agriculture and our food system also a little bit around having bees. Pollinators in general we need, but honeybees in particular have been very good for mankind, because one of the main reasons is we can move them. Because as you can see, we can have bees in a box, and that box can be moved to where we need pollination. And that's happening on a huge scale every year. So a lot of commercial beekeepers now make their money not so much with producing honey, but with renting out their hives for pollination.
Wow. In fact, they took one on one of the space missions. The bees were on that one.
Oh, did they? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was Buzz Aldrin.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Very good, they should. Yeah, let's bring them to Mars.
Exactly. And apparently you call a dead bee a zombie. They're booing at me here in the studio.
I don't know what to say. Be nice.
Be nice. I like that. Forget be not. Yeah. Peter, so what can we do in our own backyards, in our own lives to encourage bees to have places to feed and produce honey to take back, nectar to take back?
Yeah, I want to make a case not just for the honeybee. I want to say we have a lot of natural bees also just in British Columbia. Over 300 just bee species exist.
Wow.
Pollinators in general would also include butterflies and moths and many others,
Bats.
bumblebees, of course, bats, and so on. So we can, in our gardens, we can definitely be pollinator friendly. And that can start with as little as don't necessarily keep your lawn that short, okay? So a few flowers there, things just letting it grow a bit, or have a part of your garden that is not as manicured as you like. Maybe the other parts is a good start. Then you have just very good nectar providers. So I don't know, rhododendron, Pacific rhododendron, lavender, most herbs. That little herb garden, which is good for your kitchen too. I don't know, thyme and many others would be loved by
rosemary.
bees as well. Exactly, would all be loved by bees as well. And they're very good sort of pollinator packs or seeds around that you can maybe buy. Cities are changing their design a little bit. There are a few cities, or quite a few cities, because pollinators also need corridors. They want to move. And so one of the challenges that they have within cities, etc., is just when we just have just sort of concrete roads and stuff, they have a problem traveling. But maybe old railway lines or some other corridors are where we just let the surroundings grow naturally.
Yes.
Is encouraging bees and other pollinators.
Now, the Nanaimo Beekeepers Club, you're the president of that, Peter, if people want to join. Yeah, you are the worker bee.
One of the worker bees.
Yeah.
Have a great team.
Very good. How many people are in the club presently?
Yeah, we are about 100 people. We just had a meeting the other week with probably 40, 50 people there.
Very good.
Yeah, we represent beekeeping a little bit in Nanaimo, trying to encourage it, mostly for hobbyists.
Yes.
We have a few very, very great contributors who are professional, semi-professional. Yeah.
There, I'm getting the signal, Peter, that we have to buzz off here. So, sorry to cut you a little bit short, but if people want to know more, they can come out to your monthly meetings. You've got a fabulous website as well with all kinds of information on there, and we encourage people to do that too. Thank you for coming in. Any closing words just before we wrap up quickly here?
Well, be kind. No, I think bees are great, and thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us, and as Peter says, be kind, be nice. See you next time on Coast Connections.